close to full.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to our deliberative session on our first meeting of our SB2 town deliberative session here. First, anybody that's not a registered voter, asking if you'd sit over in this far left section. If you are a registered voter, join the rest of us. Okay.
I'm watching you.
Watch.
Barry, I'm only kidding. I'm not the moderator, Barry. Yeah. Don't listen to me, Barry.
Okay, I'd ask our police chief to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to recognize the chair of the selectmen, Ken Colby, has an announcement.
Good evening, everybody. Geez, really nice to see the crowd we've got tonight. It far exceeds the past few years we've had. Must be something good going on tonight. Anyway, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that tomorrow night's selectmen's meeting scheduled for Whitcomb Hall and the street lighting or street light part of it has been postponed because of the weather, and it's going to be held on Monday at Whitcomb Hall, same time. The bad news is that schools are closed tomorrow. Thank you.
That's what we learned about.
Should I check with Lisa?
All the schools are closed.
Yeah.
Honest to God.
As well as the State House is closed tomorrow. So,
Not surprised.
You know, at the end, I didn't know she had resigned.
all right.
Oh, it was just the other day, right?
Yeah, it was Saturday.
Oh, Saturday.
Day of the deliberative.
Welcome to the meeting. Thank you for taking time to attend.
Cut that off.
I'm Bruce Tatro. I'm the town moderator, one of my hats. Welcome to the first session of the town meeting 2018. This evening's meeting is the first session of this year's annual town meeting. The purpose of this session is to determine the form of warrant articles that will be presented to the voters at the polls on March 13th. This is the 13th year that the town has conducted a deliberative session since adoption of SB2, I heard SB3 today, official ballot format at the town meeting of 2005. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize the town officials and employees that are here this evening, and also the supervisors of the checklist, Bruce Snyder, Eileen Thompson, and Linda Faulkner. If you have not registered with them and gotten your ballots, please do so before we move too far on. You should have, if we get to a written, you should have the small ballots that we would use if we have a written vote requested. Let's see, okay. Let's go with the selectmen. Chairman Ken Colby, Selectman Sly Karazinski, and Selectman Bill Hutwalker. Town Administrator Michael Branley. Town Clerk Ron Fontaine. He's over there. Deputy Town Clerk Karen Elliott. Police Chief Tom DeAngelis. No, Chief, you can't run out. Fire Chief Norm Scansey. Public Works Director Lee Dunham. Solid Waste Manager, Josh Whipple. Sorry, there he is. Planning and Community Development Director, Sarah Carbonneau. Let's see, Carpenter Home Administrator, I understand she's not well, so Donna Allen is who that is. Sewer Commissioners, Glenn Page, over here. Larry Crowder, is Larry here? Okay. Rob Hitchcock. Rob here? Okay. Let's see, any other elected officials? I do have a new assistant moderator. Paul Schering has agreed to be assistant moderator for this meeting as well as at the polls, and into perpetuity from this day forward. Page. Do we have any other state reps here besides me? Jim McConnell, Barry Faulkner, and our Senator Jay Kahn. I talked with him today. I don't know if he's going to make it or not. But, okay, we've already done the pledge. First session meeting rules. Handouts, which include the warrant articles and budget items to be considered at this evening's meeting, are available in the back of the auditorium. They're all gone? He's got some up here if anybody wants one. Got a few guidelines similar to those that we have used in the past, which we have called, for lack of a better name, Grady's rules, which means basically it's moderator rules for this evening's session to try to ensure that it runs efficiently. They are, please wait until recognized before speaking. And I would ask that you come up to the microphones in order to do so everybody can hear you. There won't be any running debate. Remarks and questions should go through me, through the moderator. Before asking a question or making a statement, please identify yourself for the benefit of the taped record. Citizens may ask questions from their seats, and a portable microphone is available. I would prefer that you come up to the ones that are set up. In addition, an effort to ensure that everyone can hear the question, I'll try, I think, to repeat the question. Also, while as a general rule, non-voters cannot speak without permission of the meeting, as at past meetings, the moderator will allow town staff to provide information or address questions which may arise during the course of the meeting. Non-voters who are not staff should be seated in the area to my left and near the front of the auditorium. Everyone should treat each other with respect and courtesy. If during the meeting you disagree with the ruling of the moderator, request that the House be polled. This is the voters' meeting, and the voters may overrule the moderator. With respect to motions for reconsideration, I'm going to establish the following rule. A motion to reconsider will be considered in order if made within 10 minutes of declaring the results of the original vote. Procedures for discussing of articles during the first session. Only one amendment to a main motion will be considered at a time. So if you have an amendment to make, we will hear the amendment, get a second, discuss it, and then vote on the amendment before we hear another one. Any amendments on an article will need to be submitted to the moderator in writing. If an amendment is proposed to a main motion, it will need to be considered and disposed of before another amendment. I just told you that. This limitation on amendments is to reduce confusion regarding the question before the voters, for both voters and the moderator. Finally, since state law requires all articles in the warrant to be voted by official ballot, so motions to pass over or postpone indefinitely are beyond the authority of this session and will be ruled out of order. I will begin by reading an article and asking for a motion on the article. When moved, the main motion will then be considered on the floor. A second will be required before the question may be discussed. The moderator will call for discussion, and if there was any further discussion, and ask you if you're ready for the question. When voters appear ready for the question, restate the motion in the form of that question will appear, that the motion will appear on the official ballot. I will then call for the vote. Finally, I will declare the result of the vote. And that's all I'm going to do. I run out of pages. Any questions before we get rolling? Set to go? Okay. Does everyone have their warrant that needs one? You don't have, do you have any more? Does anyone else need one? Ready? Article 1 is going to be done by election. It's the election of officers, and that'll be done by official ballot, so that'll go directly. Article 2 is zoning amendments, and they're not subject to amendment at the deliberative session, so they will automatically go to on the ballot. Article 3, Wilson Pond Dam repairs. It's a $400,000 bond article, addresses deficiencies with Lower Wilson Pond without permanently lowering Wilson Pond. Includes repairs to Branch Diversion Dam. Estimated tax impact for a 10-year bond is 9 cents per $1,000 valuation per year, beginning in 2019. Okay. Article 3. Okay. So the article reads, to see if the town will vote and appropriate the sum of $400,000 for the purpose of preparing plans and specifications, permitting, making repairs, and constructing improvements to Lower Wilson Pond Dam and the Branch Diversion Dam, $400,000 of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33:1, as amended, to authorize the selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, and other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, to authorize the selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and determine the rate of interest thereon, and the majority of other terms thereof, and to authorize the selectmen to take any other action or to pass any other vote related thereto. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Anybody else? No. Pat, come on.
Can you please share with us how long the bond will be and approximately what the,
Can everybody hear? No. Pat, you know where the mic is. Go to the mic.
Pat Boris, could you please share with us how long you intend this bond to be and approximately what the percentage interest rate would be?
I would said it was, someone, selectmen?
The actual term of the bond will be negotiated or put out to bid by the selectmen at the time when we actually go to issue it, but for illustration purposes and what we assumed on the handout was a 10-year note through the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank with an interest rate of 2.15%.
Other questions?
My name is Rachel Elkins, and I was wondering if there are any grants available through the state to partially fund this?
Go ahead, Jim.
The only one that we are exploring at this time that we know of is through state hazard mitigation funds. That the information has been sent to our engineer, and he's currently exploring it. So if we do receive any grants, that would come off what we would need to borrow. So we are exploring that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, this article will move on to the ballot in its present form as read.
Mr. Moderator, make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 3.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made to restrict Article 3 and seconded. This will be a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $315,000 for the purpose of purchasing and equipping a fire engine. $315,000 of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 31:1, as amended, and to authorize the selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or other aid, if any, which may be available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project. To authorize selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and other terms thereof, and to authorize the selectmen to take any other action or to pass any other vote related thereto. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Chief, did you want to do a brief dog and pony show here? Or? No dog, no pony.
Article 4 is for the replacement of the West Station Engine 3, which is 31 years old. And it's been recommended by the Capital Improvement Committee. It's been recommended by the selectmen. The truck was purchased in 1987 and has served the town for that entire time. And we have established through the Capital Improvement Committee that 25 years should really be the replacement time for an engine. And so we're pretty well overdue for this truck. One of the most important things about replacing this truck is that each of our 3 fire stations has a primary engine/pumper which responds out of that station. And in 2014, the Insurance Service Organization did a survey of the Swanzey Fire Department and the town, and they concluded that because of the size of the town and because of the population and because of other factors, that each of the districts needs to have an engine in it to maintain our number 5 rating. We were in number 9 before 2014, which is no fire department or a no water supply or no fire department. And it was probably because ISO had not come in for reevaluation for a long period of time. But now we're a 5, and to maintain that rating and to have a good operating department, we should replace this truck this year. I can answer any questions that you have.
Questions? You come up front, please.
Karen Herbert. I have a question. Is the $315,000, is that the actual price of the truck? Okay. We have a capital reserve fund for fire trucks that, as of 12/31/17, had a balance of $193,961.73. Why is this money not being used towards the purchase of the fire truck instead of, this is money that we set aside to purchase fire trucks, am I not?
Yeah.
Okay. And if we did that, if we use this money, it seems to me we could get away with a bond for $100,000 or a little bit more rather than $315,000.
The fire department produces a capital improvement plan and updates it annually. And then we provide that documentation to the town's capital improvement committee, and they analyze it. And we have quite a few pieces of rolling stock. We have 3 engines, a ladder truck, a tanker, a forestry truck, 2 medical response vehicles, a boat, and a water rescue trailer, and a chief's car. Each of those has a lifespan, and each of those has a replacement date, and have had a capital improvement plan for 10 years as to when they should be replaced. We haven't always followed that plan. The plan has changed over time depending on the capital improvements committee's decisions and the selectmen's decisions and the decisions of this body. We have to replace also in 2025 engine 2, which is in the center station. And to replace that particular engine is going to cost in excess of $550,000 if we bought it today, probably closer to $6 by the time we go to replace it. So we felt that if we got a very austere, basic engine in this price range, and we save that, it will ultimately be up to the selectmen how they utilize that money that's in that trust fund. But to answer your question, which is a very good question, is that the decision was made through the Capital Improvements Committee and the Board of Selectmen that it would be wiser at this time to bond it and reserve that money so that we would have a portion of the the higher expense engine that we have to replace in 2025. That's really the bottom line. The selectmen could do it differently. I'm just explaining what they've talked about, so I hope that answers your question.
Hi, Steve Biddle, Swanzey. I'm also chair of CIPC. In response to your question of why don't we use up the $193,000, CIPC has endeavored to try and level out capital cost, looking at the future and not just the current year. That $193,000 in part will offset the bond or the cost of the fire truck. The $315,000 is somewhat misleading. The plan of finance calls for raising for only $300,000 for the bond, but being that we'll probably have to go through the bond bank, we'll have to suffer some cost of issuance of the bond. That is currently carried at $15,000. So a modest $15,000 probably would be used to offset the fire truck. Looking forward for just the next 2 years, as opposed to the next 6 years, which is the charge of CIPC's scope by statute. We have to replace an even older brush truck that dates to 1985, which I believe makes it a legal antique vehicle in the state. And that's $100,000. The following year, Squad 3's rescue Yukon will be 10 years old and will need replacement. That's another $70,000. What we are doing, and the real savings to you, is we have taken the fire truck annual increase to their capital reserve fund down from 70, 80, 90, or 100,000 down to only 15,000 for each year, which is direct impact on your taxes. Thus, by bonding it this year, we will have, yes, a half-year cost of the bond, but we will also be saving about 50 or 60,000 in capital reserve cost. So it's an effort at trying to look forward and try to get to some level and manageable basis for capital reserve funds, rather than living on a crisis basis from one year to the next year. So that's how the numbers play out. But all of that capital reserve is planned for. I would also like to say that in choosing this fire truck, the fire chief got actually high marks from CIPC for finding a truck which is considerably less in cost, almost half of the normal cost of the extended custom cab trucks that we purchased in the past. So there's been a mutual effort at saving money for this badly needed truck. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I would just remind folks that both bond articles, or was it Article 3 and 4, will require a 3/5 ballot vote in order to be approved, as all bond ones have to be. So, seeing there was no amendments to it, this article, Article 4, will move to the ballot for March, as written.
Mr. Moderator, make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 4.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to restrict further action on Article 4. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Quiet group tonight. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to enter into a 5-year lease purchase agreement in the amount of $68,000 for the purpose of leasing 2 cardiac monitors, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,000 for the first year's payment for that purpose, or take any action thereon. This lease agreement contains a non-appropriation clause, which means future years, if you choose not to appropriate the money to continue to lease, then it would end. This is recommended by the selectmen. Chief Swanzey, would you like to say a few words about this one?
Approximately 8 years ago, the town voted to purchase 2 Philips 12-lead cardiac monitor defibrillators. Many of you may be familiar with defibrillators, which you see around airports and schools and public buildings. Those are just for shocking a patient who's in cardiac arrest. These units are a combination of a defibrillator, and a cardiac monitor, which is capable of a lot of different things. It actually has multiple purposes, the most important being that it can do a 12-lead EKG on a person having chest pain. And it allows us to activate the hospital system for getting a patient to a cardiac cath lab as quickly as possible so that they can have a stent cardiac catheterization done. And the sooner that that is recognized in the field, the sooner that everything can be put into action. Many times these patients are put, not many times, but whenever it's possible, unless there's bad weather, they're put on a helicopter and they're sent to Dartmouth to the cath lab. Some of you may have experienced that or know somebody that goes through that. Our ambulance vendor also carries these monitors, but what this does is allows us to get on scene and get an early reading of somebody who has elevated ST waves, which would indicate that they were having a cardiac event or a heart attack, and activate this system. We also could do vital signs. We can do non-invasive pacing. There's a metronome device to help coordinate cardiac arrest, compressions, trending, SpO2, blood pressure, carbon monoxide. It also is set up for Bluetooth, so our current monitors do not allow us to send the cardiac rhythm strip to the hospital and ultimately to Dartmouth. This will allow that, and it will be more compatible with our partners. We're recommending that we get 2 of these again. We keep one in the East medical vehicle and one in the West Station's medical vehicle. We have AEDs in some of our other vehicles, and we found that this covers the town pretty well for this particular program. It's a tool we use and is required before we give various medications. Our advanced providers are allowed to give a number of medications, many of which require the patient to be on a cardiac monitor when they receive the medication. That's the story.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we have no amendments to this. It'll move automatically to the ballot in March as written.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 5.
Second.
Motion is made and second to restrict any reconsideration of Article 5. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session, which is this meeting, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling, that's a big number, $6,069,695. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $6,302,525, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Do I have a motion on Article 6? Do I have a second? Second. Motion's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
I think I have a brief dog.
Oh, you want to do the dogs? Bring the pony too?
Just a brief, as I said, dog and pony show, or as Bruce said, to give you a little bit of an update and then also a brief overview, and then we could get into any questions you may have. As many of you know, because I see some familiar faces, we held a budget hearing on January 10th. We have a couple items to update you on since then. One is that we discussed at that meeting a petition warrant article to support 100 Nights homeless shelter, and after that hearing, we double-checked the count of signatures, and unfortunately, fell a couple short of the statutory 25. In addition, at the budget hearing, a number of citizens spoke in favor of funding health and human service organizations that the town has funded in the past. We had proposed some reductions to those agencies. So in response to both of those items at the next meeting, the Board of Selectmen, as is their right, revisited the budget and increased funding to include funding for 100 nights and to increase a number of the agencies, or funding to the number of the agencies that requested funding, not necessarily to their initial requests or prior approvals, but largely a middle ground between the initial proposal and their prior requests. We've included in here after the budget a detail sheet that shows each organization and the amounts recommended, so in case anyone wants to discuss any of those specific organizations, those are in there and we can address those as needed. As Bruce already outlined, the operating budget total, so I won't repeat that, but that's a decrease from the 2017 budget of roughly $217,000 or 3.4%. It's also a decrease from the 2018 default budget, which is what is voted on at the ballot, of about $232,000 below the default budget. I'll just give you a quick snapshot of some of the major increases and decreases as you look down the line items in the budget. One of the increases is elections and registrations. In 2017, an off year, we only had one election, the town election. In 2018, we have 3 elections, so there are various expenses related to that. Personnel administration, the New Hampshire retirement system had a rate increase last year on July 1st, so we reflected half the year's increase last year and reflect the other half this year. Rail Trail Advisory Committee, that's just a new line item, so I wanted to touch on that. It's not a lot of money, but they are a new committee, and they have some modest administrative expenses. And the other and largest increase is debt service. Last year, the voters approved a bond for addition and renovation of the police station. So this year, we are picking up that expense for that debt service. Some of the major decreases, which fortunately there are more of those than increases, legal and professional services, we have a new IT support vendor, so that's reflecting a cost savings this year. Insurance, we're seeing lower health insurance rates, roughly 5% lower, so there's some savings there. Emergency management, Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant has closed. There were a lot of expenses for drills related to that, so with that no longer in existence, that budget has been decreased. Also, some of those expenses that were reflected there for the facility in the police station where they're housed is just going into the police budget as sort of a more accurate reflection in the department for the building. Highways and streets, that's the biggest dollar amount reduction. We received a one-time funds, thanks to our friends in the legislature, for some road and infrastructure maintenance. So to reflect that additional funds, we're sort of showing a one-time reduction in the budget. We'll still hopefully do as much or more work than we would have done otherwise, but that's just sort of an accounting transition this year. Health agencies, we touched on. There's still a slight decrease in funds, but less dramatic than was previously discussed at the budget hearing. Recycling center, Josh was able to beat up waste management and get you a better rate on hauling our recyclables and trash, so we're seeing some savings there. And recreation, a number of programs have moved to the revolving fund to be offset by income that was created last year, so that's not necessarily less or fewer programs, it's just an accounting change. Default budget touched on a number of the factors that were in the budget are also impacting the default budget, and then there's a summary to the budget. So that's the Dog and Pony Show. I'm happy to assist with any questions as needed.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody wishing to? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the bottom line by increasing it by $10,000, please.
Second the motion.
We have a motion to amend the amount totaling, right now it's $6,069,695 and add, what was it, $10,000 to that. It's been moved and seconded. I would call on Ken to brief us on what that's all about.
Yeah, earlier this evening during our
Is that
portion
on?
of the meeting before the, should be on. Is it here?
No.
Might have ran out of battery. Here you go.
There, is that better? Oh, yes, it is. I can hear myself. Anyway, earlier in our portion of the meeting tonight, Mike Branley brought to our attention that the welfare line in the budget expended almost twice as much during the month of January this year as it did in 2017. So basically, we're increasing that budget up. Welfare, pardon the expression, is kind of a crapshoot. You never know what's coming around the corner. And so we felt it was necessary to up this budget by $10,000.
Any discussion on that, on the motion to amend?
Pat Bories, can you share with us, it's a little confusing as to what you've done with the health care. Some you've increased, but some you have not. So,
Pat, we're on an
the
amendment
motion.
right now to add 10,000 to the budget. And I can only take one amendment at a time.
I'm not amending anything, I'm asking a question.
But it doesn't pertain to the,
Well, he's adding $10,000 for the health care,
no, welfare.
welfare, not health care. Excuse
No.
me. Okay.
Speak up, Ken.
Welfare.
Okay.
We have a motion to move the question. Any further discussion on this? Then the motion is to move the question on the amendment. All those in favor of moving the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay, we're back to the amendment. And the amendment would be changing the total amount of the proposed budget to $6,079,695
Yes.
instead of $6,069,695. Everybody understand that? Okay, this we have to vote on. All those in
Can I ask
favor?
a question
Any-
on the budget now?
No, not till we finish with the amendment.
Okay,
We'll get there, Pat.
all right.
All those in favor of adding that to the total signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you. Now, Pat. Remember what you wanted to do?
Oh, yes. Now we've gotten through welfare, I'd like to ask a question regarding the outside services for health care. You indicated that you increased some of them, but not all of them. Can you give me a breakdown of who was not increased or what they were increased to?
Selectman or Mike?
Got to get the right mic here. Okay, what happened, it was increased, the original proposal was to go back to 2017 level, which was $66,350. Then it was dropped down, Mike, where is the figure that we originally had? It was about $32,000. As a result of the budget hearing, we increased it to $50,000. The list of agencies involved are home health care and community services, which was increased. I wish we'd had the prior. It's been increased to 8,000. American Red Cross is 0. Meals on Wheels to 7,000. Community Kitchen was raised up to 15,150. Southwest Community Services was raised to 6,600. CV Community Transportation is 500. Monadnock Family Services 7,500. Samaritans 750. MCVP is 2,000. That's a new item. 100 Nights Shelter was increased to the $2,500 limit that Mike had indicated earlier was put through on a petition warrant article that fell short of the number of voters, but we felt it was important since the budget hearing input to put that in. So that's how the total now reads as 50,000.
All
Did that
right.
answer your question, Pat?
And the original amount requested for all of these agencies came to $69,000.
The 66,350.
Well, the sheet that I was given said 69,000.
I don't see that.
It's adding the 100 nights that wasn't.
Oh, adding.
Okay, that adds in the 100 nights that wasn't part of it.
Okay. I would like to move to increase the budget by $20,000 to cover the full amount requested by all of the health agencies.
We have a motion to increase the budget by, amend the budget by adding $20,000 to cover all the agencies,
Requests.
all of their requests. Do we have a second to that motion? Second. Okay. Discussion. Pat, do you want to expound on the reasoning behind it, or?
Well, we are in a small town. We do have a lot of out-of-town services that take care of Swanzey. They do great work. And as I was looking through the paperwork that I had for our town, we have right now in tax liens over $334,000. That means that there are a lot of people in this town that are hurting. And I think it would be prudent, besides being right to take care of our neighbors, it would be prudent financially for us to spend the extra $20,000 to ensure that our folks are taken care of, as opposed to them having to come to the door at Town Hall and request services that would cost more. So I think it's a win-win situation if we just go ahead and approve an extra $20,000 and take care of those that are our good neighbors.
Paul Schering. Some of you were at the budget hearing and heard me expound on this and the fact that it comes to a point where you can pay now or pay later, because if these agencies for some reason elect to or are forced to stop funding or helping the citizens of Swanzey, the taxpayers of Swanzey are going to wind up paying for it on the welfare side of their ledger. $20,000 on a $6 million budget is not going to be noticeable come tax time. Taxes are high, yes, but this is not going to boost them enough higher to jeopardize anybody. I support this. I support the amendment.
Anyone else? Barbara.
Barbara Scully. I've been a resident of Swanzey for 36 plus years, and it's been my experience that we help our neighbors as much as we can. However, I think there come situations where we can't help our neighbors enough. There's services that are provided by the professionals, by these health agencies, that we cannot provide. And as far as a community, we are a very caring community, but I think we need to fund these agencies that can take care of the counseling of individuals who have met their nadir. When we have people who are sick and need some assist at home, people who need to get assistance with fuel because they might not be able to stay in their home if they didn't have the fuel paid for. Job training, there's numerous services that these agencies are providing, and I think it's really foolish to think that $20,000 is going to force someone out of their homes when I think by not spending that amount of money, a lot more people will be impacted.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to speak to the proposed amendment.
Be my guest.
It's interesting to hear how quickly people are willing to say that $20,000 doesn't impact the bottom line. I think you can ask each of our department heads how they would feel if they each had an additional $20,000 in their budget. We worked extremely hard this year and last year, and this is my 4th year. I can say we've worked very hard for 4 years, but I know in particular this year and last year, we've reached a point with our budgets across the board where I can sincerely tell you that we have literally trimmed whatever little fat and sinew there was from the bone. When we took a look at this particular line item, we didn't reduce the proposed amounts lightly. We gave significant consideration to this. Oftentimes when we receive requests, they come in as a one-page, one-paragraph, you donated or you gave us $5,000 last year, we're asking for $5,000 this year. There's no explanation. There's no understanding of what their budgets are. There's no information relative to the service they provided to citizens in Swanzey. Southwest Community Services, on the other hand, provides a very detailed letter in which they indicate how much money they allocated to citizens in Swanzey, and they ask for 1% of that. It's a very easy decision to make when you look at a letter like that. But when the other ones come in simply asking for an amount, it's hard to justify when you know that you've gone through your budget and you've taken cuts as small as $100, and the effort is made to try to reduce the impact on the town portion of your tax bill. What prompted me to bring to the board's attention another question was that one of my clients provided me with a tax return from one of these agencies. That agency won't be named tonight, but that agency pays in excess or approximately $600,000 to their top executives, all or most of whom work part-time. And I looked at that and I thought, if you're paying your chief executive $160,000 for 18 hours of work a week, why are we, the town of Swanzey, being asked to provide you with X number of dollars? So we put a lot of thought into this. And I provided that particular document to a gentleman who's involved in a great deal of charitable giving. And he told me that in their case, they look at information like that as well when they make a decision as to whether they're going to allocate money to that particular request or not. So I want you to know that as a select board, we really struggled with this one. And a couple of other points I would make are the amount that Southwest Community Services requested, and I use them as an example just because it was such a well-written letter, of $7,100. Is that enough money, or is it too much money? I have no idea. When did Swanzey start giving to these agencies? Did we ever have a discussion about it? So we got to a point where ultimately I made the comment, and I'm sure Beverly could attribute that it was rather flippant, but basically, we were elected to make decisions on your behalf. This is your opportunity to indicate to us that we may not have acted the way you would have liked us to, but we had a reason for it. We really, as I mentioned, struggled hard with this budget, and we're going to struggle hard with next year's budget. But we're always going to look to give the best benefit to the citizens of Swanzey that we can. $20,000 doesn't mean much. The $10,000 that we added to the budget for our own welfare line item added 1.8 cents to your portion of the tax bill. So 20,000 is going to add 3.6 cents. Doesn't sound like a lot of money until you start bringing all of them in. They all can be justified. They all can be supported. I can honestly tell you that if you pass this, there is one agency that I will refuse to add money to their request. And that's the one that I referred to with the amount of money that they pay their top executives. We may use that money somewhere else. It may end up in our own general welfare. But if I'm successful in getting a second vote, that one agency will not get more. Thank you.
Anyone else for a first bite of the apple? Dan, Barbara, if you wait just a second.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dan Kaufman, of course, of Swanzey. A couple of quick comments. One, I would not, or a question, if we increase it by $20,000, you don't have to spend it on anything other than what you want, yes?
Correct.
So we don't have to spend it on any of those organizations. We could, for example, give some to the police department. That's what I would prefer. And so further, just a line of questioning, I would be remiss if I didn't, for the either third or fourth year, make a pitch to further increase our expenditures with regard to our police department. We're not related or anything, you know, but it is the third or fourth time I've requested that. I think we have a greater need every year, and we have more competition every year. So I would encourage you to even spend more than the 2.4% that we're requesting in terms of a line item. A question along those lines is, may I ask, rough number, I'm not going to hold you to 0.1%, what roughly in terms of pay scale change are we granting towards our officers on average on an annual basis, or with this last or this current planned budget? Is it a 2.4% pay increase? Is it a 1? Is it a 5?
I think you want to get back to your amendment.
Yeah, I think we.
Oh, we're on to 20,000.
We are on the.
You are.
20,000.
I'm out of order. I'll come back.
Thank you for recognizing. Thank you. Barbara, go ahead.
One thing I forgot to mention is if you look at that spreadsheet that shows the recommended budget and it has all the health agencies, if you look at the actual spent in 2016 with the approved for 2017, there's not much difference. You know, so it's almost like going back to 2016 and funding 2018. And yes, 20,000 to one person is a lot. But this is going to be, I would say, 10 agencies, but it looks like it might be going to 9 agencies, you know, spread out. So, again, I think it's very much worth expending.
Thank you. And I've got one more.
One more point. Nickel here, nickel there, or as old Ev Dirksen said, a billion here, a billion there. Soon you're into real money. You take 10,000, you take 20,000. That gets you just about the annual debt service on the fire truck. I'd rather have a fire truck.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, now, if my math is correct, adding the $20,000 will bring us up to $6,099,695. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Which will add an additional 20,000 on top of the 10 that we just approved. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll take a vote on, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Ooh. The chair is in doubt. All those in favor, please stand. Paul, of the amendment, the $20,000 amendment. Paul, can you? What was yours again? 16. That's 30 votes total. Okay. Everyone opposed, please stand. That's, I don't think I need to count that. Thank you, folks. My ears aren't what they used to be.
Bruce, if I could say something. On behalf of the board, we'd like to thank you for this discussion. Most of our meetings are unattended except for Wally and occasionally Gus and sometimes Pat. So we make decisions in a vacuum. And regardless of how this vote went, we clearly heard your message from the budget hearing. And we want you to be assured that we do care about the agencies that are working on behalf of Swanzey, and I suspect that if the other agencies come forward with a proposal similar to the one I keep going back to, which is Southwest, but I did forget the community kitchen made a completely a significant application when they came through, that next year you may see a different number, but it will be justified. So again, I personally thank you for the dialogue and the discussion because it's very enlightening.
Okay. Any further amendments to the budget? It failed. I'm sorry, I didn't announce the result. It actually failed. So we're back to whatever it was, 6,079,000. Anything further? You sure you were in order? Go ahead.
Yeah, my apologies for that. Back to where I should have been in the first place for my original line of questioning. Relative to the police department budget line item of an increase of 2.4%, I'm looking for the average rough pay increase that we're passing along on an annual basis, or we have the last 2 years and plan to the coming year.
Based on the information that Mike Brantley has handed me, to be allocated after town meeting, roughly, we're talking roughly, it looks like to be about 1% cost of living and 2% performance. And that's based on reviews by the supervisor, or the chief in this case.
So thank you for the answer. I think that's commendable. I'm certainly pleased to hear that. So overall, if I'm understanding you right, the 2.4%, that $22,000, within that there's a 1% and a 2% variable, if I understand that correctly? That's good, nice job. I'd love to see that in other areas of government, specifically our school system, in terms of that rigor. So good job in that regard. I would urge you to continue to look at that and the staffing level that we have, And I'll continue to make a pitch both to this board and the chief as well to increase our police force. I think it's necessary. I certainly benefit, whether I see them every day or not, I know they're there. So I appreciate their work, and I appreciate the way that answer was presented. Thanks, Mike.
And we appreciate their work, too.
Okay, so we're back to the amended budget. And if there's no other amendments, I'll attempt to read it again. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant article and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget proposed with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $6,079,695. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $6,302,525, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Now, I don't believe we need another motion. No. Just to move the question. Move the question? Yeah. Move the question, works for me. Okay, I will ask, seeing how this is amended, and it won't go direct as it's written, I will ask for yeas and nays. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you. So this will move on to the ballot in those amounts.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 6.
Second.
Motion to restrict Article 6 for further discussion or further action. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, thank you. Article 7, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $274,000 to be placed in the following expendable trust and capital reserve accounts of the town. Revaluation and updates, $35,000. Carpenter home, $25,000. Police, IMS, which I assume is information management system, $3,000. Police facilities, $3,000. Emergency communications, $20,000. Fire ponds, $7,500. Fire department tools and equipment, $10,000. Town hall, IMS, $10,000. Town hall repairs, maintenance, and improvements is $60,000. Mount Caesar Union Library, $3,000. Whitcomb Hall rehabilitation, $32,500. Those are the expendable trusts. The capital reserve funds for fire trucks, $15,000. Recreational facilities improvements, $10,000. Police cruisers, $40,000. Pat, you had mentioned that is this one that you wanted to amend? Yeah, I need to move the question. Although, go ahead, somebody move it and second it.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. All right, now Pat.
Thank you. Pat Boris. I move to decrease the Whitcomb Hall line item by $22,500 to $10,000 and increase the town hall repairs by $22,500 for a line item total of $82,500 on town hall repairs.
We have a second? Go with that amendment? Thank you, Pat.
This does not change the total amount of $274,000 on the article.
Okay, let me check.
I was going to give everyone else a chance to speak at this, but yes,
You made the motion, go ahead.
okay.
Phone.
No. I'd like to ask if any of the selectmen can tell me, after the initial proposal to renovate the Whitcomb Hall, it was expressly told to the town that it would all be by donation, and I think the town has been very fair in giving tax dollars towards this appropriation for renovations. I've been in the building, it's turned out lovely, but can you tell me what the town has received in revenue in the year 2017 to offset some of the tax money that we've been putting into it?
Rental fees, 1,800. Just in terms of rental fees was 1,800, but are you talking about grants and donations and all that?
No, what kind of revenue had?
Okay, so the revenue for rentals was $1,800 in 2017.
So I think that we've been fair to Whitcomb Hall, and I'd like to see it continue on with donations and grants and so forth. But our town hall has waited and waited and waited patiently, and I think it's time for us to start focusing on that.
How would this affect Whitcomb Hall's
Well, okay.
second floor?
Wickham Hall has had 2 or 3 or 4 different committees since it was shut down in 1988, I think it was, something like that. And finally, there's now a committee that's taken the bull by the horns and done a heck of a job on the first floor, the exterior, and whatever. The goal now is, and I think that Pete Johnson may speak to this, but the goal right now is to bring the upstairs into usage again. And my understanding is that the cost factor of the second floor renovation is in the vicinity of about $600,000. That scares the living daylights out of you. However, when you put it in the proper perspective, which I think Pete will do, the town's exposure over the next 3 years is going to be maybe in the vicinity of about $35,000, maybe $40,000 a year. They've applied for an LCHIP grant, and the part of the LCHIP grant, and this is for I think $200,000. Is that right, Pete? Part of this is to show LCHIP the involvement of the town, and that the town is serious in continuing with the project. He's also going to talk about donations, and I think he's got a couple of people that want to donate substantial items that are part of this $600,000 package. So the town's involvement over the next 3 years may be about $1 out of the 6. In other words, 100,000 versus 600,000 to bring that up. The town hall is under consideration for reconfiguration. Right now, we don't have any room for a real meeting area in town hall. As somebody mentioned, I think it was either Bill or Mike, that we have Wally that shows up. Wally Smith shows up almost every meeting, and sometimes we have 1 or 2 other people that show up. Nobody ever shows up until we have an issue. If we have an issue, we need a space where we can go and we can meet, and we can do this at Whitcomb Hall. Whitcomb Hall has a capacity, 75 sitting? Yeah. And that by and large is about the largest crowd you're going to see outside of something that we have here at the high school. Whitcomb Hall is playing an integral part of the town's needs, and that should be recognized. Now, getting back to Town Hall for 1 second, is that we have hired an architect, and she's reconfiguring again Town Hall. But again, we still need the meeting space, and that's accomplished by Whitcomb Hall. So, again, do you want to have Pete?
If it pertains to the amendment, so I guess if you'd like to speak to the changes in the funding. Sure. You can even use this mic. All right.
Hi, folks. Pete Johnson, Chairman of the Whitcomb Hall Committee. And just want to address a few items to take off from a little bit what Ken just said. And I thank you very much, Pat. You make some valid points, absolutely. What we have done in the last couple of years has been tremendous at the Hall in terms of raising money from a variety of sources. One of the things that we are asked when we go to foundations, individual donors, etc., is what is the town's support? Because remember one thing, this is a town building. It's not some country club thing sitting in the West Swanzey. I have some charts here. It's very difficult, obviously, in this room to show you, but just by the color alone, yeah, sure, thank you. You'll see that
The other one.
This side here is the town's appropriations, okay, which have been over a course of many, many years here, $195,000, all right? This side here totals approximately $185,000. Donations in kind have been $56,000. Charitable donation fundraisers, a lot of people here have been to the chicken barbecue as an example. We just had a spaghetti supper. All those little things go into the cash donation fundraising. That's $67,000. And different grants have been $50,000, $600,000, $56,000. So we are approaching the halfway mark on that. What our What our intentions are going forward with a variety of the fundraising that we're doing, you'll notice the purple section. This is speaking to Ken's comments, that as we go forward, the town appropriations will continue to go down. All this other stuff will go up. We're looking for probably around $350,000 to $400,000 from several different organizations, foundations. The L-chip, which is in the $200,000 range that we're preparing to file now. There are also several New Hampshire foundations that have taken an interest in Whitcomb Hall. Some of them organizations we're going to approach this year. Now, whether or not they give us money hinges on that question. You're asking us to donate to Whitcomb Hall. Well, what is the town doing? It's a town building. That's the first question that comes out of their mouths. And we want to be able to say that the town is behind us, they're supporting our efforts. Then they will, think about donating to us. A lot of them are local organizations in Keene, Walpole, New Hampshire, the Hubbard family, the Tom Haas Charitable Foundation from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So a variety of different organizations. And one of the things to think about as far as Wickham Hall and the usage of it is, like Ken said about meeting space. You know, it's pretty hard to have a meeting in the town hall. But you got Wickham Hall sitting there. Donations have flown in for tables, for dishes. The town hasn't paid for any of that stuff. That has come from donations. A PA system has just been donated to Wickham Hall to assist with meetings. Activities within the hall, to Pat's question about the revenues being generated. Those will increase as we've just really begun. 2016 was when it officially opened, and we had to get chairs, we had to get tables, we had to get dishes. We're renting it several times this month alone. We had a spaghetti supper that cleared $1,000 profit. I mean, that sounds like small money, but that goes to the Wickham Hall Fund. Norm has, during the very cold period, presented the hall as an opportunity for shelter for many of the people in town. We would like to get the upstairs done so that we can go back to generating revenue again. Many people in this room remember going to wedding receptions, parties of all different types. It's a beautiful theater up there if you haven't seen it. Not so beautiful at the moment, but when we get it redone up there, we'll be able to have a lot of the arts and those types of things in Wickham Hall, which hopefully will be, paying venues. So that's why we want to continue our work with the hall, and we need the support of the town, because it truly is the people's house. You own Wickham Hall. That's not a private club. And we just ask for the continued support. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that earlier tonight I mentioned that we canceled the meeting for tomorrow night about the selectmen's meeting and the streetlights over at Wickham Hall because of the weather. So when I talked to Mike this morning about the cancellation, we agreed that we would do it next Wednesday night. Well, next Wednesday night, Wickham Hall is booked for a Valentine's thing. So I mentioned to him about Tuesday. Well, Tuesday, is it yogurt? Yogurt. Sorry.
You planned that.
I planned.
We make yogurt on Tuesday.
Gosh, I can't even say the right word now. But anyway, that's going on Tuesday nights. So again, you can't go by the $1,800 that Teresa said that we got last year, because it's an ongoing hopefully increasing venue. So the money should be coming in, and hopefully we can double, even triple in 2018 the money that we got from 2017. So bear in mind. Now, I hate to digress here, but I will. We had the opportunity about a month ago to have Senator Shaheen come to Swanzey. Now, she was addressing the zip code situation in North Swanzey, which we're not going to address tonight. But she had a chance to go through the building at Wickham Hall. And I, Mike wanted to have it at Town Hall. And I said, well, what about Wickham Hall? And, well, we'll leave it up to her front people. Well, the front people and she wanted to go to Wickham Hall. And she had a chance to see the upstairs. And she has said that if there are any grants that are available for a building at the federal level, okay, that she'd be more than willing to go to the mat for us. So, these are all things. It really is a showcase. And anybody here that hasn't been in Wickham Hall, please just make an appointment to either go with one of us or go with Pete or whatever to take a look at it. Because it is quite an amazing building. So, again, thanks for letting me talk.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay. The motion is to decrease the Whitcomb Hall by 22,500, so it would bring that down to $10,000. Is that correct, Pat? And then, and to up the town hall repairs, maintenance and improvement to $82,500. Any further discussion on it? Okay, you're voting on the amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The noes have it, and the amendment fails. Okay, so we're back to the original article. Any further amendments? Oops, here comes one. Further discussion, too.
Just discussion.
Okay.
Karen Herbert. Every year we put money in the fire ponds. This year it's $7,500 in the expendable trust fund. And as of the end of 2017, we had $20,953.15. I don't know about you, but I live in East Swanzey. There are a couple of fire ponds that are fairly close that nothing's been done with them for years. And I would like to know what the plans are to rehabilitate these ponds so they can be used. Should I have a fire at my house, where are you going to get the water? I mean, we got to have a tanker, obviously, but you got to be able to pull water from somewhere. The river flows too fast. These fire ponds are very necessary. I'd like to know, is there a plan in place to rehabilitate these ponds and bring them back up to where we can use them again?
Chief Swanzey, would you address that, please?
Yeah. That's a great point, and the pond that you're referring to near your house is the next project that's on the list to be completed. The problem is that creating a fire pond or restoring a fire pond it's not as inexpensive as you think it is. And going out and getting various estimates from different vendors, that particular water source, I have an estimate in my hand tonight that we had done by, just to get a budget figure from the company that did the Main Street in West Swansea. And it's very similar to other bids and quotes that we've had in the past from contractors, but it's about $28,000 to accomplish dewatering that pond. There's a dam involved. There's material that has to be moved out of that pond, and a dry hydrant hopefully put in for that $28,000. We had money in the fire pond trust fund when I first came to Swansea 10 years ago that had not been being spent. It was there, it was being put away every year, and the Board of Selectmen at the time decided to stop requesting money for that until the fire department came up with projects that they wanted to do for fire ponds. So we started looking around for projects that we could do, and we had a survey done of the whole community which identified all the water sources in the town. So the Capital Improvement Committee this year, the exact amount I think is for this year is $7,500. Add to it. Thank you. Okay, so there'll be $35,000 that's in that particular account proposed by the Capital Improvement Committee, and it would be my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that we get that pond taken care of as soon as possible. I know it's been waiting for a long time.
Is that on Old Richmond Road?
Yes.
Or the one on Platinum Hill Road?
The one on Old Richmond Road.
The one on Platinum Hill Road is in better shape than the one on Old Richmond Road.
And, there's needs all over at the town's 49 square miles, and I'm not taking away from what you're saying. You're 100% right. And any time in a rural setting that we can develop these water sources, even if they're just draft sites, we want to do it. But there is a lot of expense to it. That's the bottom line. So I think we could do a lot more projects if we put more money away, but I think the amount that's being recommended is reasonable, and we'll take them one at a time, and we'll take that one into consideration. It's a good point. Thank you.
Just to amplify the chief, there's $35,000 allocated maximum to be spent on the old Richmond Fire Pond next year. That's 2019. And we currently have about 21,000 in the reserve. So it's very first on the list. We'll then build money up and attack the next pond probably in about 3 years. I hope that answers your question.
Sounds like the Capital Improvement Committee's been doing a fantastic job here. Okay, we're back to the original Article 7, where to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $274,000 to be placed in the following expendable trust and capital reserve accounts of the town. I'm not going to read them all again. Further discussion?
Call the question.
Okay, so it's unchanged, so it'll go on to the ballot as written.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 7.
Really?
Yes, believe it or not.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. Where are we? Article 8. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $395,000 to be placed in the following expendable trust and capital reserve accounts of the town. Road rehab and reconstruction, $265,000. Winter maintenance, $10,000. DPW facility improvements, $5,000. Town bridges, $10,000. Highway and cemetery equipment, $100,000. Covered bridges, $5,000, or take any action thereon. Do we want Lee to address this? Are you guys going to?
Move Article 8.
Moved, and do we have a second? Second. Discussion. Lee, do you want to say anything, or? Well, it's up to the selectmen, I guess.
I got put on this whole thing by myself. I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's great.
Anyway, this is the capital improvement end of my roads and building improvements and vehicles. And it's pretty much unchanged with one little thing here, and I guess it won't be little to you, but road reclamation, rehab and reclamation. Last year was 165, this year is 265. Now, to you, that's a lot of money. To reclaim a road, to do the work on roads is very expensive. To the tune of, if you look at our roads, millions of dollars is what we need to put into them. And I mean, not 1 million, I'm talking several million to bring them up to speed. We can't afford that. There's no question. We can't afford to do it. We can do it over time and do it a mile, 2 miles, trying to get ourselves up to 3 or 4 miles a year. The better the roads are, the less money it takes to bring them back up. In our industry, if we could do those little preventative things to stop the water from getting into the cracks, a lot of people don't like chip sealing, but chip sealing seals the cracks, stops the water from going down into them. Overlaying, just overlaying will do it. But what do we have for New England roads? What did they build on? They build on the
Cart paths.
Yeah. They build on whatever they had. They didn't dig out the base, put in something of well draining. So we're working on a lot of roads that never had the start that they should have had. So really, to do it well, you saw Main Street, right? Main Street, we did 3/4 of a mile of road, and it cost us over $700,000 to do that 3/4 of a mile road. But it was dug out and put back right. Hopefully that will remain that way for a number of years. I guess that's all I want to, that's all I have to say on that. And then I just ask for your support on this article, please.
Thank you, Lee. Any further questions, discussion, comments? Selectmen? No? Okay. So, the article reads, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $395 to be placed in the following expendable trust and capital reserve accounts of the town. This is recommended by the selectmen, and since we didn't have any amendments to it, it will go on to the ballot as written here. Article 9.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of
Oh,
Article
man.
8.
I didn't see that coming.
You did.
We have a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 8. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now can I go on to 9?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund pursuant to RSA 35:1, titled the Carpenter Home Capital Reserve Fund, for the purpose of facility and other improvements and purchases to benefit the Carpenter home, to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be placed in this fund, with such sum to be raised by taxation, and further to designate the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend. Motion.
So moved.
We've got a motion to move. Second? Okay. Discussion.
Just a brief.
Yeah.
As you might have noticed on one of your prior articles, Article 6, there was also another expendable trust fund for the Carpenter home. That fund is used to offset operating losses, so this is totally separate from that. Over the last several years, the Carpenter home has been using the income off various trust funds that came to the town along with the home to provide for the capital improvements. Those funds have been at least temporarily tapped out, with the major expense being a fire suppression and alarm system that's currently being worked on. So this fund gives another mechanism for the town to approve capital funds for the Carpenter home. Number of life safety and other needs up there. The two slated that we hope to do, one or both in 2018, are electrical and wiring upgrades. They currently, the current system, it's based on an aged farmhouse, as you know if you've been up there. So there's a lot of aged wiring that needs replaced, and also hoping to do a generator upgrade. The current generator is undersized and will not support the new fire suppression system.
Pat.
Thank you, Pat Boris. This warrant article is calling for a new capital reserve account for the Carpenter home. Other than this year in doing the electrical and the generator, are you anticipating that you're going to be requesting funds be put into this account on a yearly basis, or do you think that by selling the land for $175,000 that the income from that principal will be able to secure any improvements that are needed up there.
We hope to not need to continue to come for certainly this amount every year. As Pat mentioned, as we'll get to on another article, 175,000 potentially going to purchase land from the Carpenter home, but that would go into the non-spendable principal portion of those funds. So they would generate additional income, but it's not, unfortunately, a $175,000 amount available tomorrow for the Carpenter home. So I would say yes, potential for future needs, hopefully not a steady 50,000 every year.
Further questions? Seeing none, we'll move the question. Since it hasn't changed, we haven't amended it, it will move to the ballot in March, and I will entertain a motion to restrict reconsideration.
Anybody want to make that motion?
Bill does.
Bill does.
Bill did.
Bill did. Do I have a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded to restrict reconsideration on Article 9. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to discontinue the future fire station capital reserve fund created by Article 30 of the 1988 town meeting. Said funds and accumulated interest to date of withdrawal had to be transferred to the municipality's general fund, estimated balance of $361,800. And should warrant Article 11 be defeated, this article would be void, and this is recommended by the selectmen. Someone explain this after we motioned it.
Move Article 10.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay. The reason that you've got Article 10 and Article 11, and you know, pardon the confusion, but this is basically the wording that needs to take place when you want to change a capital reserve or remove it and create a new one. Frankly, there's been a lot of misinformation about this. The only thing that transpires between 10 and 11 is that 11 allows the money that's been sitting there for quite some time, the 361,000 or thereabouts, it frees it up to go for other needed repairs at other stations around the town. Not misstatement, but it's close to a misstatement, is that this appears to be a change to allow the selectmen to expend the funds. Nothing could be further than the truth. This article was originally passed by the town in 1988 and amended in 2002 to allow the selectmen to expend the funds. So it's always been there since 2002. And again, this is the only change is to allow the funds to be utilized if we have a need for a roof, or if we have a need for this, or if we have a need for something else. And it can be used if we decide to try for another design on a fire station at a later date. So again, it changes the way the funds can be dispersed.
I realize that this seems like a sleight of hand. The bottom line of passing this is that the town will not have to appropriate funds for the maintenance of the 3 present fire stations for the foreseeable future. If this fails, then next year you're going to be looking at a minimum of $40,000, probably as high as $60,000 going into a capital appropriation for fire station maintenance. And just about every year after that. So this is an effort by CIPC to actually save some taxpayers some money here. If we build a new fire station, it should be bonded, because that fire station will benefit future residents of the town for 30, or in Swanzey's case, probably 60 years. And it should be allocated as a cost against the residents out then, which is what a bond does. At present, we have over $300,000 sitting earning the princely sum of about a half of 1%, meaning the true value of it is going down each year, wasting away, and you'll have to pay taxes to maintain the fire stations. This is an effort actually to save the taxpayers, of which I am one, some money over the next 3 to 5 years. It's that simple. And anybody who tries to characterize it as elsewise is not doing the town any benefit.
Any further discussion on Article 10? Seeing none, and that we didn't amend it in any way, it'll move as written onto the ballot in March. And yes, I will entertain a motion to...
Bill?
Restrict reconsideration of Article 10?
Really?
Oops.
We have a motion to restrict, yeah, this has been a long day. Restrict reconsideration of Article 10. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund pursuant to RSA 35:1, titled the Fire Station's Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of maintaining and improving the town's current fire stations, and to purchase land, design plans, and construct future fire stations or other related expenses, to raise and appropriate the sum of $361,000 to be placed in this fund, with such sum to be raised from the undesignated fund balance, and further to designate the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend. Should warrant Article 10 be defeated, this article will be void. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second. Moved and seconded to move Article 11. Does anyone need to discuss it, or was the last explanation fairly clear? You guys? Or?
I don't know. I think Steve made it very, very clear, and I applaud him for salvaging my remarks.
Okay, seeing how we didn't make any amendments on it, it'll go on to the ballot in March as written.
Mr. Moderator, make the motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 11.
We've got to vote one of these down, folks. No, not really. We have a motion from Selectman Hutwather to limit reconsideration of Article 11. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you.
No.
Article 12, to see if the town will vote to amend the Recycling Center revolving fund created under Article 4 of the 2010 town meeting pursuant to RSA 31:95-H as follows: to stop depositing the funds received from the sale of recyclables marketed by the center into the fund until further action is taken by town meeting. Do I have someone to move?
Move Article 12.
Second? Moved and seconded. Discussion. And I, for one, would like to know where we're going to put the money.
Could someone explain this and
That's what I was just asking.
where the money will go and how it will be utilized?
I'm going to call on Steve Biddle. This was his brainchild.
The Recycle Center revolving fund was created about 8 years ago in a creative effort at municipal finance. A revolving fund is technically not meant for capital items. It's meant for operational items. This revolving fund had the effect of creating an automatic addition to a capital reserve fund without the approval of the body each year. And it merrily has gone on autopilot for 8 years. Alas, we find ourselves with about $500,000 in this fund at the end of the prior year. $500,000 exceeds, pardon me, the most exaggerated estimate of future recycle center needs. Therefore, to keep automatically dumping money into this fund out of the general fund, which is the effect of this revolver, is both not necessary and punitive to the taxpayers. Although in the current upcoming, the 2018 year, it wouldn't have any direct benefit because it has to be approved before it goes into the budget. Ergo, it wasn't in the budget that we just passed. So in the current year, and there's approximately $70,000 each year going into this fund. 70 each year. That's a lot of money. And that would, by necessary operation of the RSAs, go into the unassigned surplus for this current year. After that, it would be a credit, as all municipal revenue, against expenses, and therefore a reduction of your taxes, penny for penny. The $500,000 would remain there, and CIPC went through recycle center needs and determined that the needs just had not been adequately studied. New ideas came up which were much greater in cost savings than what we had looked at prior. And everybody decided to give Recycle Center this current year to come up with a viable future budget, which we would measure against that $500,000. And if there is any surplus, I'll be back here next year recommending that it be returned to the general fund or repurposed elsewhere. So, two answers. One, the money that would go in will no longer go in, and it will, sooner or later, inure to the benefit of the taxpayers directly. The money that is there will be held there until a need comes up for it for capital items. It's really that simple.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Further discussion on Article 12. Seeing none and that it was not amended, it will go on the ballot as written.
We'll let that sit for a while.
Let that sit for a while? Oh,
They
okay.
might want to come back to it.
Now I'd like to call on the assistant moderator, Paul Sharon. Would you like to do the last?
Reconsideration of Article 12.
Second. That isn't what I was asking, but that's okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
By Bill.
Second by Bill? Oh, no. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now come up and do Article 13 and Article 14.
Use your big voice.
Might as well break you in, right? I just need to see if I can answer the question.
Article 13, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to purchase approximately 185 acres of land, including Mount Caesar, from the Carpenter property, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $175,000, such sum to be placed in the Lucy Carpenter Trust with interest earned to be expended to benefit the Carpenter home, with $140,000 raised from the Conservation Land Acquisition Fund and $35,000 raised from the undesignated fund balance. Purpose of this article is to allow this additional land to be available for long-term town use, while also providing additional money to benefit the Carpenter home and reduce the cost to taxpayers to support the home. This special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 3276 and will not lapse until the land purchase is completed or by 2020, whichever is sooner. This article is recommended by selectmen. Do I have a motion to move Article 13?
So moved.
Second? Second. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Pat?
I'm afraid I have a question. Please explain to me, if the taxpayers are raising $175,000 for this, explain the sentence that says $140,000 raised from Conservation Land Acquisition Fund and $35,000 raised from undesignated fund balance. I don't understand what that means.
Does sound a bit contradictory. Can I get an explanation?
The total amount the land was appraised for is the $175,000, which is broken down between $140,000 from the Conservation Land Acquisition Fund, which is an existing fund that the town has contributed to, and then the $35,000 from the undesignated fund balance, which is the town's general fund. That breakdown is just an approximate amount, but it was recommended by council that we use multiple sources to maintain the town's flexibility to use portions of that land for purposes potentially other than conservation land.
Does that sufficiently answer your question, Pat? The way, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think what Mrs. Voorhees is worried about is the fact that we are being asked to raise and appropriate this sum, but not from taxpayers.
Correct. It's not from general taxation.
Okay.
But the verbiage has to be there.
Further discussion? Seeing none and with no amendments, Article 13 moves to the ballot in March, as shown.
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 13.
Second.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Assistant Moderator.
Motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 13 has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Article 14, to transact any other business that may legally come before this meeting or take any action thereon. Do I hear a second? Got a motion moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, Article 14 moves to the ballot in March, as shown. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. Good job. No, you don't get to put in a timesheet for this one. Anything further for the good of the order? Very good. I want to thank all of you for coming, and this meeting is adjourned.